Welcome to the Rocks and Oceans podcast, where you'll learn all about living in healthy masculine and feminine balance. We're your hosts, Jamel Harris and Alex Golden. Have we made all the relationship mistakes before? So you don't have to.
Fun, connection, abundance, and a whole lot of sexy time will become your daily reality when you choose to step into an aligned way of knowing yourself. No worries if you feel salty and cynical from heartbreak. That's often the most powerful starting point for transformation. Welcome, and we're about to have so much fun together.
What's up? How y'all doing?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, we're excited today. It is Monday where we are. Not sure where you are or what day it is, depending on what day you're listening. But it's the beginning of the week, and we were talking about a topic that we can come on and discuss today. And the thing that we landed on is the hard guy versus the masculine guy. Because a lot of times we get those two conflated, like they're not the same. They're totally different. But a lot of times we look at the quote-unquote hard guy as the alpha male, and the maybe he's masculine, but he doesn't have those characteristics as maybe a beta male. And so what we want to do today is talk about the differences between the hard guy versus the masculine guy.
Very true, because it's the confusion on this, I think, is leading to the simp fiasco that we have currently going on, as
The
in
simp
like
fiasco?
the simp fiasco.
Not the simp
Because
fiasco.
it's like men who are being really good partners with their women are often getting called simps. And of course they're often men who are actually masculine and they don't care. So like, actually it's not an issue for them, but it does highlight how much it's an issue.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, we hear that word thrown around a lot today. So they simping.
It's like if you like your girl,
you're an alpha
you're simping.
or you're a simp. And,
Yeah.
and I think there is somewhere in between, because we have both characteristics. I mean, obviously you can be a simp or you could be an alpha or a masculine man. And what we want to do today with this episode is define kind of what that looks like in our opinion.
And how we even got here, because it's a bit of a history.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll start with that history. Being that I'm a masculine leadership coach, I've researched this stuff and how we came about and how we got to where we are, because it happened to me. You guys heard my story on a earlier episode about how my mom and dad weren't really together. I was raised by my grandmother. So I didn't have a lot of masculinity around me. My grandpa was around, but he wasn't necessarily present in the home. He'd just come home at night and sleep there.
He sounds like maybe a hard guy, huh?
Say it ain't so. Papa was a hard guy.
He might have been the...
Yeah, but I
super
will
hard.
say, I mean, we looked at him as a strong masculine guy, but knowing
Exactly.
what we know now, that wasn't the case. And what we're doing today is kind of talking about what that looks like and where we want to go with it. So a little history about how we got to where we are now. There's something called the ECOA or ECOA. Y'all stay with me. I'm like, what the hell is that? That's called the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. So this was passed in 1974. And what it did was it eliminated discrimination as far as sex, as far as your race, as far as your marital status. It basically gave everyone access to credit, Equal Credit Opportunity Act. So the reason that's important is because in the 70s, women couldn't get checking accounts. They couldn't go get loans as far as getting a mortgage. They couldn't go purchase a car to get a car loan. That was just not available in 1974. I know that's crazy to think that was just 50 years ago, but this is what's going on. So they couldn't get credit. They couldn't open checking accounts. They couldn't get cars. So the women in that time were kind of in a pickle. They had to stay with their spouse, whether he was acting a fool or not. You just couldn't go anywhere because you didn't have the capacity to open up a checking account, buy your own home or whatever. So pretty much you were stuck with your spouse that you chose. Some cases it was good, some cases it was bad. But either way, before 1974, you were somewhat stuck financially. Well, once that passed, the women started being able to, they've been able to work, but they were able to like saving money. They were able to qualify for mortgages. So you saw a mass um, wave of divorces in the 80s because a lot of women was like, I'm not staying here for this shit. Like, you acting a fool. You don't come home. Like, I can remember my grandma and grandpa just getting into arguments about the money, but she had to take it. But fast forward to 1974, you don't have to take that anymore because I can go get my own job. I can purchase my own car. So what happened was we had a lot of divorces and a lot of single parent homes. And what happened was that created a divide in society, in my opinion, because what you had was some of the people grew up in homes that was a masculine and a feminine presence in the home. But like myself and a lot of my friends, I was raised by my mom, but I really wasn't even raised by her. I was kind of raised by my grandmother because, again, my mom, we lived in a small town. She moved to Dallas to go make more money for the family. So essentially, I was raised by my grandmother. So, excuse me. Because of that, when a male is raised by a female, she can't give him masculinity. Like, that's just what it is. Like, we have both of them inside of us. We have masculine energy in us and feminine energy, but inherently we go further to one. And just as a male, you're probably going to be more masculine. As a feminine, you're going to be more feminine. So I was raised by my mother and my grandmother. So guess what? They're teaching me how to be a nice guy, how to not be like whoever they were with. And that's a dangerous thing because what happens is a boy that's raised by a female, the masculine grows by challenge. So she's not necessarily challenging that boy. She's like making it easier for him versus the dad. We're challenging. We're not nice to the kids because we know the world's not going to be nice as you grow up. And so as the masculine grows by challenge and the feminine grows by praise. And so you had a lot of boys growing up being praised by their mom. You're awesome. You're this, you're that. Well, that's what you see in society. The minute your spouse comes to you and says she got a problem, you don't know how to deal with that because we weren't taught or we didn't have that masculine presence in our life growing up to help us deal with that masculine energy when we get challenged. And so you see a lot of defensiveness today. You hear a lot of women saying my husband or partner is like another kid. And it really came from that time frame of the women getting divorced. Not everybody, but a lot of them did. And they were raised in young men. And so what you see in society is a lot of us were raised by single moms and we didn't know how to be a man. And so I think that's what you see in society today is a lot of men that are really boys because they were never really taught how to be a man. And so you want to speak on that?
Absolutely. And it's thank you for that. And I think it's helpful to have that conversation because there's a couple really notable things as part of that. And one of the things that I think is really important to notice is that no one was from this recent history, no one is trying to do anything malicious, right? Like there's a lot of arguments like, well, then it's the single mom's fault. And then people are like, well, the dad's left. So it's really the dad's. That's neither here nor there because what we hear as that is if we drop the pin of time in the 70s, this shit's already had a momentum and a life of its own way before this. So like even your grandpa, our great grandpas, all that, they didn't make it happen either. Like basically both men and women, masculines and feminines, are being impacted by this system. And all of this stuff is an outcome. And what I think we've done instead is argue about whose fault it is then. But
Right.
the reality is those people are like long dead. Like it does not matter who started it because that was like thousands of years ago. And really they're super dead. It does not matter.
They're super dead, baby.
Super dead. Well, because, yeah, like you can't even go yell at them. So anyone living now, like you're right. It could be frustrating to live with a man who's defensive and you're like, well, it's not really his mom's fault, blah, blah, blah. You can spend a lot of time on that, but is it really doing anything? Right? Like, is it actually going to get us all in a better spot? And I don't think so. And I think that's why it's so helpful to talk about the history and even zoom it back out further and just be like, the men are being hurt by patriarchy. That's not like it's any better for men. Or I guess arguably you could say like with higher pay, it's quote unquote better. But with what we're talking about today, if someone gave me the option of you'll have more money from going to med school, but you can never cry tears of gratitude ever again. I probably wouldn't make that choice. Right, because to me, I like the feel when you feel so overwhelmed with like a positive emotion like that. It feels so good, and it's often been so helpful in my life when I felt that way to be like, I need more of this. Like this is this meaningful that it gives me this feeling, and that's why to miss out on those opportunities and not have the awareness in life. That's where I wouldn't give up the money for it. Or I wouldn't take more money to lose it, rather. And so what I'm saying is, no one's really, as much as we can personally be mad at somebody, and that's totally valid, we also don't necessarily have to hang our hat on that. We can just be like, okay, we all inadvertently ended up here by somebody else's, decision. And now, as real people wanting to bring change into the world and make it a better place, what does it really look like to bring in more masculinity rather than the hardness? So how do you describe like what a hard guy really is? Like, what do they do that makes them look like that?
Yeah, and to your point, where you are is where you are.
Yeah,
like,
true story.
Where you are right now is where you are. Like, I was raised by a single mom. I was raised by a single dad. I was raised by both parents. It doesn't matter. What we want to do is
right. I mean, I was raised by both parents, and I still got fucked up.
Yeah, for sure. And so we want to talk about like some of the behaviors, and this isn't all encompassing. There's others. If y'all have other things that you want to add to the list, feel free to throw them in the comments. But here's a couple things that we came up with as characteristics of a hard guy. And so the first one is, everything is fine. How many times do you hear that? I'm okay. Nothing's wrong. And fellas, y'all know we're lying a lot of times. Mm-hmm. But we've been taught to not tell our spouse or our partner what's going on. But that's why they're your spouse. Who, if you can't tell her or him, who are you going to tell?
Basically, right? Yeah, but the I'm fine is especially comes across as a very hard guy thing when it is very visible from the outside that there is something going on, and then the I'm fine overlaps it. Looks a little, it's probably how the male or the female equivalent of how we feel how y'all feel when we kind of have our like period time. Like if there's any sort of tripping out and people are like, woo, that was a hormone. We all went on a little hormone roller coaster there. I think that is the female equivalent because it looks so wild to us, because it's like, I just saw you get fired with our own, like my eyeballs heard that's a reality. But and like fine, you really, babe, like HR really sent that letter and it's like, you're fine. It makes no blessed sense at all.
So tell me from the feminine, how do you guys feel about that when you're looking at your partner? In this case, we're talking about a male. He's not fine. Like, just to use your example, he's gotten fired. He don't have a job. He don't know where he's going financially, but he's saying he's fine. Like, how does that resonate with you guys, just being the feminine?
Yeah, and I guess the only real way, and I'm so sorry, but the really only honest answer is that it looks quite weak, because with it already happening, it's already happening. As in, like, you both know your bank account is going to have things happen to it because of that effect, right? So when someone appears from the outside that it's too fearful to even acknowledge that it's happening, it really just makes it very obvious looking that it's like, this is a fear, this is a weakness, like it's too scary to say, and it's so scary that I'm going to do it even when it's blatantly a lie.
Yeah,
it comes across looking like a significant weak opportunity, like, because there's the blatant, like, I can't even say, oh, there's a tsunami coming at me, and you're like, nope, I'm cool.
Like, y'all are afraid, like, what's going to happen to the family, and so you're sitting there like, how is he not afraid, or how is he cool right now?
Right, because there's really two options, because if the weak is, well, you're actually scared, but you're too scared to say that you're scared, so that must mean you're really terrified. Or You really don't care what's going to happen to our family. I really think that one's pretty rare. But I mean, if someone between choosing that your man is weak or acting a little crazy at the moment, to be honest, we'd rather think y'all being a little crazy at the moment than to acknowledge that your man's weak, right? And so it puts us in a bit of a bind as well, because for me to go, ooh, yeah, this is really scary for him, it is kind of scary for me. Like if I'm also going through the same experience and someone's blatantly being like, no, it's fine, I'm just like, oh, wow. Am I going to be in charge of when the shit really hits the fan? Am I going to be the only one left standing who's not closing their eyes and hiding? And that it's not that weak is a problem. It's that we feel a lot of fear in response to that. And there's going to be follow-up questions or follow-up actions that we have. Most of the time, they're not quite as, I don't think, the masculine enjoys those things that we do, because either she starts doing stuff like, well, I'm going to make sure we're fine, and starts doing stuff, and then people feel a little put out, or she starts planning.
We'll start feeling some type of way about that.
Yeah, exactly.
But we put you in that position because we're not being honest as to what's going on. So
Totally.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, say, for instance, I'm going to lose my job, and I'm like, everything's fine. But then you're hearing everything's fine. So are you
Like,
saying...
so there's not going to be any planning. I better...
Yeah, so you're like, okay, let's go behind and get a second job or do whatever. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I think that's where it's like, if you don't acknowledge it, then you can't make up any plan to fix it. And so that's what we know that it's going to be left with, is we're going to say it's fine until the actual crap pops out and something needs to happen. And all of a sudden it's a mad scramble to be like, why didn't we plan for this? But it's like, we know why we didn't plan for it. We didn't even talk about it.
We didn't want to acknowledge it.
Right. So it's sort of like, if your partner is not acknowledging the stuff with you, then you are the only one eligible to make that plan. So unfortunately, as much as I can see how it would make the masculine feel a type of way about that, but really there is no other like, I don't see what other choice that leaves, because I don't know who in their right mind, if they are paying attention, is going to leave their family like 0% accounted for.
Right.
Like, someone's got to make the call. So I think on that one, you just got to do what's right for your family. And in that sense, that's where, if a feminine needs to step up and do something and then deal with the masculine, like, healing that and overcoming, I think that that's better than, saying, okay, this dude's going to get it and he doesn't, and then you're mad. I don't see how you, like, a resentful woman, feminine heart is not real. It's like, it's hard to work with. By the time you're really pissed and, like, put out and all that, our emotions are, speaking to us loudly. But if we could get there a little bit earlier, I'd rather be fixing the problem of, yeah, I know you maybe felt the XYZ. What does it look like to acknowledge this and overcome it? Like, that's easier for me than anything else.
And it's like we talked about on earlier episodes, is it's an opportunity to come together. But if, as the masculine, if you're saying, I'm fine, well, you're really pushing your partner away, and you don't even realize it, because your partner knows it ain't fine. Like, you just lost your job. We just lost 70 grand, 80 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand, whatever you make. So you're like, it's not fine. And it makes you figure, like, what the hell are we doing? Like, why are you saying we're fine? And so if we can acknowledge that's the masculine, because this is what happens, guys. We think losing that job defines us.
Right.
That's not us. That's just something you were doing. And so we like, oh man, what am I going to do? And we try to hide it, but that's not who you are. That's
right.
maybe
Unless
an opportunity for you to do what you really want to do.
Right. Unless she brought divorce papers along with when you got fired, that did never happen. Like,
right.
As in, she has not left you because you lost your job. So you don't need to start thinking and telling yourself the story that that's what's going to happen or anything like that, because unless she's moving like it, she didn't.
Right. But I think we have a lot of stories in our head because we hadn't worked on ourselves. We think, oh, I lost my job and now I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my wife. That's not it. But it's an opportunity for us to communicate. We're going to talk about that every episode.
Yeah.
See, we can communicate, and together we can figure out, how we can move it forward together versus you over there thinking one thing like, damn, he's saying everything is fine and he don't give a damn, and I'm over here just pouting and just feeling sorry for myself. Versus as a partnership, we come together and like, okay, I'm gonna go file unemployment. I'm gonna start applying for jobs tomorrow, whatever it is. But now we both feel like we moving down the road versus the masculine over here in his own world, feeling sorry for himself, feeling bad about the decisions he made or didn't make, getting laid off. Then the feminine sitting over here like, I don't know what the hell's going on with my man. It's just a whole mess. And so instead of us coming together, we're actually moving apart by not communicating. And we see it all the time.
It's so true. And another version of this, it doesn't even necessarily have to be that you that it has to impact you. For example, let's say the masculine loses his grandma, delete, but or something else happens that, you know, categorically doesn't have anything to do with the feminine, right? Like there's no money lost, there's no that kind of thing. What that, I think, there's a couple important components of that. Is that for one, the feminine is always going to have an inkling, at least, especially the more you know, the longer you know each other, you have an inkling of how your masculine is going to respond to something like that. And where we are, when someone is, you know, in a partnership and someone, which means that someone wants to help, they can see that it's going to impact things like money anyways, not directly, but indirectly from a place of feeling bad, feeling down, you know, not kind of having a super, like a supportive way of seeing it. You know, if it just feels like, you know, you're going along in life and someone can just be taken from you and that really impacts your ability to move forward in life, like that's a really meaningful and valid thing. So there's, you know, there's like, we understand there's real things that come from loss or pain or things like that. And so really it also feels scary for the feminine, even if it doesn't directly like that, kind of indirectly it always does. Because if the leadership is gonna get kind of wonky, or it's gonna get messed up, or kind of pause for a period of time, there's serious like feelings that we have about that. It's okay because shit happens in life. But like that's the whole thing. She's wondering where she's gonna need to fill in all of the stuff, like if you do need downtime, what is she going to do to support the family? Where is she going to need to step forward? Maybe that means that for her, she's going to step forward in some ways. That means she's going to stop like going, you know, she's going to pause going to the gym, or she's going to cook less or something. And if you are like, oh my gosh, you don't care about yourself, you're not going to the gym and you're getting takeout for the family, and like you're not even knowing what is happening around you, you're going to piss off some feminines, basically. A, is going to make it a lot harder for them to actually support you through whatever is going on. But two, you could actually literally look at it and ruin the situation that is for your benefit. And I think that does unfortunately kind of happen.
Yeah. I mean, what I hear you saying is communication.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the other benefit, and this is why this is so important. It sounds like, you know, well, I just said I'm fine. What's so bad about that? I mean, really, nothing's bad about it. But I mean, the flip side of that is when it comes to leadership, when something happens, especially when it's nobody's fault and it's just out of your control, like a death in the family or anything, delete, you are role modeling like emotional leadership. What is okay to do in your guys' world, in your family, when something happens. So if you don't enjoy the what's wrong, honey, and she says I'm fine, and you don't think she's fine, she is literally following the example being set.
Damn it, girl.
I know, right? So it really has to, if you're seeing it, it does happen where sometimes someone got to it before you and that's why you're seeing it. But in either case, the leadership is the answer. So it doesn't matter. It's not about blaming or like why, but just more like you actually doing it, that it shows this is a safe place for me to have my emotions and for me to bring my emotions, because that's what you are doing. So when I have my thing of, you know, whatever happened, I don't need to go like pull back and bring up my own masculine, I can really just come bring my feminine to you and have you help. But if I see you being really hard and rough with your emotions, that's like, I know that's what I'm going to get.
And we respond in kind. Like, you're going to respond the way I am. So if I'm open to you, like, I'm dealing with an issue, and if I'm willing to communicate with you about it, that allows you the same opportunity to be vulnerable and honest the same way I am. So I think you're exactly right about the leadership, guys. We got an important job and we don't even realize it. Like, how you're acting, you're teaching your spouse or partner to do that. You're teaching your kids to do that.
She's going to teach the kids too.
It's not a small deal. Like, we're talking about this, but it's not a small deal because other people are watching you. And so those are opportunities to come together, or you start putting a wedge in the relationship. And what we want to do is make sure that we have the resources to come together and make it a better relationship versus worse.
So true. Yeah, because I think people, they'll kind of, they will not feel comfortable sharing with their partner for whatever reason, their emotions or something that happened or how they're feeling or insecurities. And then you get into a bit of a groove as a couple. And so sometimes masculines will, and I've heard this happen in real time, where masculines are wanting to be more emotionally present and something happens and they're like, I'm going to go be vulnerable with my partner or with my wife. And then sometimes they don't get a very favorable response that first time. And we really, let's just like pull back there, it's not that, it makes a lot more sense when you look at it from masculine leadership, because essentially the masculine does need to go first, but that first time is, or let me say not needs to, is better if the masculine goes first because that's leadership. But that first time, it's really, you're just role modeling, bringing it up, but you haven't had the second experience where you role model having a favorable response.
That's true.
So, like, if you think you're just going to start talking vulnerably and your girl's going to be like, oh, yeah, yes, she can do that with her friends. No, she's not doing it for you because you aren't doing it for her or you, right? So the thing that I think backtracks it, instead of if that – I get it, it's a bit of a catch-22 because that really kind of sucks. Like, we always want where when we were making an effort to be met with the acknowledgement of making an effort. So, feminines, if you can, even if you respond how you normally do, if you can acknowledge the effort being made, I think it goes a long way. But more importantly, I think for the masculine is the understanding of it doesn't have to start externally. Really, this is if you can admit it to yourself, that is, say, if you can admit it to your own feminine and then have your inner feminine be like, well, actually, going for a run sounds like it's the best thing for me right now. And then you actually like acknowledge that and do it for yourself. That's literally what it looks like. So you don't have to practice and feel scared to get a response from someone else. You can practice internally with yourself and holding space for some of your emotions, and then later on sort of bringing it into discussion. And you can even say, like, this is what I've been doing, this is why. Because when a feminine hears the story of how you've been emotionally present with yourself, that's good enough for us. If you can do it with you, you can do it with us.
And to that point, if we can't be present with our emotions, there's ain't no way in hell we're going to be present with your emotions. No. Meaning, if we're afraid of our emotions of anger, we don't admit that we're sad, we feel guilty, we feel shame. If we can't deal with our emotions, there's no way you can deal with your partner's emotions or your kids. And as you were talking, it just makes me think about how important this is and the ripple effect that's happening. True. Because of the masculine leadership in the home or the community or whatever it is. Because like you said earlier, that starts the leadership. So if I'm shut down, I'm teaching you to shut down. Then the little kid comes home from school, he's shut down or she's shut down. And you like, hey, what happened at school today? Oh, nothing. And you looking like, you look a little weird, like something happened. He might have got beat up or something. What happened? Oh, nothing. But as a leader,
Yeah.
you've taught that
Absolutely.
unknowingly, right? So all of us, we have work to do around emotions, communication, because quite honestly, most of us have not been taught what that looks like in a healthy way. So, I mean, if we're out here and we're saying, oh, I don't got no problem, we probably talking to you.
Yeah. I think actually we could take this exact same conversation and flip it and put it into a parenting conversation. Right? It's like hard mom versus healthy mom. Like this is exactly
Hard
what that
kid versus
go
all that.
basically. Yeah, because the hardness is an attempt to cover up any weakness, ironically. So the more hard you have to be, the more acknowledgement of your weakness that you're really doing. So everybody else is like, got it, check. All right, moving on. And you're wondering why they look at you crazy. And it's like, that's literally why. Like the time has, I think, passed. I think there's enough conversations and things happening now that it was always looking a little wild. But I think now with naming things, it's starting to really be out there. And what's cool is that I think the kids can really help, because the kids are so astute at noticing the dynamics in a family and stuff like that, that really I think paying attention to what they're doing is a really, if you're not clear about what your behavior is, you can look at the kids.
Very true, because they're copying off what we're doing.
Yeah.
They're mimicking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right,
Absolutely.
we had a couple more things on here. This is good. Guys, a lot of times we say nothing's wrong. It's not my fault. There's confusion, but we don't feel like we can do anything about it. And that's just not taking responsibility, really, is what that one is if your spouse or partner is coming to you about something over and over and over, as the masculine, your job is to listen and, okay, maybe I need to work on listening. Maybe I need to work on communication, whatever it is she's coming to you about. We said lack of emotions and emotional safety. I think we kind of hit that. What about weaponized awareness?
Yeah. This is one of the sneakier ones that people do. I think for the most part, people are doing the like reverse psychology directly. That they're like, I feel weak, therefore I'm going to act hard. Done. There's this secondary layer where it's in NLP is called double bind, where is sort of like reversing the reversal, where you're like, no, see, I'm outsmarting the system. Because I feel weak, I'm going to acknowledge a weakness to act hard. And what that really looks like is when people are like, oh gosh, I just am such a bad husband or something. Oh gosh, I don't know anything about vulnerability. My dad wasn't vulnerable. It sounds good, right, on the surface. Like it sounds very, very valid. And it sounds like an acknowledgement, but where it goes hard, guys, over masculinity is that none of those things were ever created to acknowledge, like, what will happen in the future of what you can and can't do. It was only acknowledging kind of the feelings and what kind of like current, but it wasn't supposed to predict behavior. So that's why saying I have a hard time with vulnerability is just only the first half of that sentence, and the second half of the sentence ends with, and what I'm going to do about it is XYZ. Right. That's really, but to really just say, oh, it's because I'm an introvert. Oh, it's because I have anxiety. Oh, it's because I'm an only child. Oh, it's only because I didn't have a dad. Oh, you fill in the blank. Like the awareness brings pain if it doesn't get followed by action.
That's good.
So, oh, I'm a bad guy, I don't listen. The feminine has absolutely nothing to say to that. That's between you and you. Yeah. Like, okay, cool. What are you going to do about it? Is the only thing that I really have to say about that. Now, if we want to talk about like your feelings around it, if it were you, whatever, like, that's valid. But in and of itself, that awareness is absolutely useless. Right?
Yeah.
It then has to go, I don't listen. And what I'll do to listen better is 1, 2, and 3. Now that lands the plane on the masculinity aspect of it. Otherwise, the thing that I think we have to remember sometimes is the feminine is already bringing the awareness. So when you come to the feminine with awareness, more than likely she already knows. No, she may not say, "Oh yeah, that annoying thing you do, you finally figured out why you do," but she's already tracking the fact that it's happening probably. So that's why the awareness, it doesn't do it for her, but it sure as hell doesn't do it for you either, because what next?
Yeah. Well, what we want to do is use the awareness to change.
Right.
Right. And so, um,
And
there's,
weaponized incompetence is very similar. The like, I'm gonna act like a hard guy because I couldn't possibly know how to do a dish, or I couldn't possibly figure out a laundry, or I couldn't possibly figure out where the food is in the house. That too is the I'm so hard. I have a secretary kind of thing, and that is, I think, a beautiful thing. I love it when people have money, but why are you treating your wife like that? Like, as in, it's totally fine to just have an assistant then,
yeah.
and ask her or him about whatever it is that your heart desires. But probably for spouses, we should leave that separate.
Agreed.
Agreed.
And we're not talking about guys that you come into your partner or spouse with every single problem you have. That's going to turn her off. We're talking about like big things, like things that's going to affect her life, the kid's life. These are things that we should be communicating about, not dinner. I mean, that you can just make that decision. You know what I mean? But when we're talking about communicating, we're talking about being hard with regard to things that's going to change the dynamic of the family. Talking about like a job, or say your a family member dies or something. You're like, oh, I'm fine. Like, dude, no, you're not. You need to process that emotion. You know what I mean? Or you lose a friend, or it's just a lot that we've been taught that the right thing to do is to act like nothing's wrong, and that's
Right.
absolutely wrong, because the masculine guy, he's not any less of a guy because he says, man, I'm sad that my grandmother passed away. That does not make you any
Absolutely.
less of a guy, but for whatever reason in our brain, we think that makes us sound weak. Like some of the stuff I'm saying, it may seem like it's weak, but the stuff that we talk about make us closer. Like, this is the best relationship I've ever had. Like, I understand I'm the leader, I'm the masculine in the relationship, but there is a place for me to tell you what's really going on in my life. Like, again, if I can't tell you, who the hell am I going to tell? If I can't talk to you, who can
Right.
I talk to? But it's a fine line between coming to you with every single little problem I have. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about big things that can affect her and the kids and in the family unit.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's true. It comes down to if the roles were reversed or the frame was shifted, would it still make sense? Because what I mean by that is, it's problematic to say, I'm fine about my grandma dying, because honestly, if you lose someone close to you and you don't care, the subtle subconscious message will like, well, shit, if I die, are you not going to care? Like, that's wild, and
So
and
true.
it doesn't, so that frame is really like, if something happens to the kids and you act like you're fine, what is the implication there, right? And the same thing is, you might have a problem with dinner and there might be an implication that matters, and maybe there isn't. So it's sort of like, when it comes to acknowledging something, I think the reason that women, the feminine, finds it so attractive for all these masculinity things is that the realness and the vulnerability and the like, all those things, you require someone to have a lot of resources to handle them. You need to be a strong man that can be sad and then make appropriate decisions, and to take responsibility for what happens next, and all of that stuff is a very strong man, right, to us. And so there's a lack of, you can't fuck with him, basically, is what happens. That's why they come across so strong and masculine, is because a hard man needs all these conditions to be met for him to be hard. You can't talk to him. You have to talk to him at the right time. Everything has to be good. He has to have a job. He has to be getting sex. He has to have good friends. Like, and if none of those things, he's going to be mopey. Whereas, like, it takes a really, really strong person to stand in the face of some chaos and not change their personality, not become a shitty human, not become, you know what I mean? So I think for us, that's where our respect and our attraction and our, like, wanting to have sexness really, really rises if you're kind of doing the opposite of what we were naming. That's what works for a lot of feminines.
Yeah, and because y'all know what's going on,
Right.
you know what I mean? Is you understand where that man is, and like I said before, you can, like, the feminine is love. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm going through a hard time, the thing I notice in our relationship is you want to love on me, but a lot of times we talked about it before. I'm taking that away from you. I'm like, no, I'm fine. My back is fine. This first point, I'm fine. Meanwhile, my back is killing me. But I'm like,
Yeah, he's
I'm
like
fine.
hobbling around the house. I'm like,
I'm fine. But we do that, but we take the opportunity for our partners to love on us and give us the feminine energy that we so crave.
I know, right?
Such a good thing. So
I know, right? The hardness gets in the way of that. And so that's why I think the feminines everywhere, I feel comfortable saying that I'm probably speaking for most of them to say we are all collectively so excited for the days where our men can feel comfortable just being real and just saying, you know, how they feel and what's going to happen, and then just, you know, having a conversation on what happens after that. And I think it will literally change relationship dynamics overall, like the whole getting to work and the men go bitch about their wives and the women bitch about their husband. That will stop. I really truly believe that, because we will begin to have the viewpoint of each other that really is like, yeah, men aren't psycho. They just sometimes have a hard time over, you know, like all the things that you hear that sounds crappy, like, oh, men are psycho, women are psycho, blah, blah, blah. Like, none of that can exist when you're talking to a real person.
absolutely.
You have to actually work it out and see them as a human.
So masculine leadership really looks like owning what's happening, but knowing that doesn't define you. Like, you just lost a job, dude. There's people that lose jobs every day, but it's, as the masculine, not taking that on because you said something. If I lose my job and I'm still the same Jay, I'm still happy, I'm still loving you, I'm still loving the kids, we're fine. But the challenge comes in when I turn into mopey Jay. When I'm sad, when I act like I can't do anything, I can't do dinner, I can't find my clothes, I can't do this. Like, yes, I lost my job, but I don't have to take everything down with me, if that
And
makes
you
sense.
can still be a sad leader who is intentionally doing things to cultivate joy and happiness in the home, right? Like, that's what's so interesting, is it doesn't have to be on and off switch. Like, as in, you don't have to feel sad and then pretend.
Right.
You can literally, like, acknowledge that you're sad and say, but I'm still making the choice. Like, you might not want to go to work, but you still make the choice to, like,
Or
act
fill out
like a
some
regular human,
applications. Like,
right?
I'm sad right now, but I'm going to be sad, but I'm going to go fill out some applications. And again, if I'm sharing that with you, you can help encourage me. Now, you're not my mom. You shouldn't be, fellas, she shouldn't be telling you to get up and go fill out applications and go get a job. That's not masculine. But she can be like, hey, babe, how was your day? What do you got scheduled? Do I need to help you look on LinkedIn? Or she can assist you because she knows where you are. And that in itself is going to make you feel better about what you're doing because you got a partner going through it. But
Right.
I think oftentimes we get in that box and we feel like we're by ourselves. And as guys, we have to dig out of this box by ourselves. And that's not true. Are there times where you need to get out the box by yourself? Absolutely. But again, when we're talking about these big things, that's what partnership is. I mean, you hold me down when I need to be held down, and I hold you down when you need to be held down. That's what it is. If we're not operating like that, what are we doing?
Right. Absolutely.
And so, you know, masculine leadership, it owns what's really happening. Then it makes choices around what we can do to get better. So that may be, you know, get a new career. You know, we're talking about emotions. Maybe you like, I don't have any emotions. That's a good sign that you need to go do some work, right?
Yes,
Because
you do.
I felt like that. I was like, oh, I don't cry. I don't do any of that. Well, when my ass was getting divorced, I was crying like every couple hours. Like, and I'm just honest, but I was like, oh shit, you do have emotions. We all
Right.
have emotions. That's why God put tear ducts in your eyes. That's why you cry. That's why you feel certain things. But you just want to learn how to use those emotions to move you and your relationships and your family forward. So you can look at therapy, emotional processing. We talked about like just opening up, being honest about who you are. Because once you're honest about who you are and where you are, what you've done, the mistakes you've made, nobody can use that against you. Like me getting on this podcast, I don't care what nobody's going to say because I've done the work on me and I know the mistakes that I've made in the past, they don't define who I am today. So it's very important that you're the first person that you have to fix before we start fixing other people. But we just want to come on and talk about what's the difference between hard and masculine. And if y'all have any other things to add to it, feel free, because this is a topic that, I mean, all of y'all have heard it. It's just in society right now. It's just, it's
sure
much needed.
is. Absolutely. And if you need help with that, check out the links in the show notes. There's a couple ways to get more support. There is, you can hop on a one-on-one call with Jay. There's also, for the masculines, there is a new group that you will find linked up in the show notes, and we can, Jake or I can talk to you about that. So check out the show notes. The show notes are always going to be the place to find out more and to get hooked up with the resources that you need, because like you're hearing, we've been in all of these spaces and have gone through a lot of this stuff, both personally and from the outside. And so we are more than happy to help you out and get you unstuck and get you moving.
All right, guys. See y'all next time.
Thanks for listening to the Rocks and Oceans podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend that could use this information. Please also subscribe and leave us a review so that more people can find this work. You can also find us over at YouTube and TikTok at Rocks and Oceans Podcast. Let's build a happier and more powerful world together.